November 1581. Picture this scene. It's a moment that just changes everything for Russia. Tsar Ivan IV, Ivan the Terrible, as we all know him, in this fit of rage, he lashes out.
Yeah, an uncontrollable rage.
Exactly. And he strikes his own son, Tsarevich Ivan, with a coal poker. The young man just collapses. And his father, Ivan, he realizes immediately, the horror of what he's
He cradles him, trying to help, but it's just too late.
Far too late. And that single impulsive act, it didn't just cost a life. What really died there with the Tsarevich was maybe the whole future stability of Russia itself.
Oh, absolutely. That one terrible blow really did set in motion this chain reaction. It plunges Russia into, well, a century of just unbelievable chaos. It's the period we now call the time of troubles.
Right.
And for our deep dive today, that's what we're digging into. We're going to unpack this incredibly complex time using the material you provided. Our mission really is to trace how one family's tragedy could lead to an entire nation just unraveling.
Yeah.
We'll look at the succession mess, the power struggles, brutal ones, the natural disasters which were devastating, and the rise of these, well, multiple pretenders to the throne. It's quite a story.
It really is a catastrophic moment, setting Russia up for just turmoil.
So, okay, Ivan IV has just killed his heir. The huge question then is, what does that mean for the Rurik Dynasty? How bad was the situation?
It was bad. Dire straits, really. With Tsarevich Ivan gone, Ivan IV only had 2 sons left. Dmitri, who was just a child, way too young to rule.
Right.
And Fyodor, and Ivan himself, their father, thought Fyodor was, well, unskilled, kind of unfit for the throne.
So a massive problem for the dynasty's continuity. I mean, the Ruriks had ruled since the 9th century.
Exactly. Unbroken rule. So this wasn't just a family problem, it was an existential crisis for the Russian state as they knew it.
Facing that kind of threat, no clear heir, instability looming, what did Ivan V even try to do in his last days? Did he have any plan to secure Russia's future?
He did try something. He could see the storm clouds gathering, So he set up a regency council.
And this wasn't just some minor group. It was made up of really experienced, high-ranking nobles. The idea was they'd maintain order. Key people included Fyodor's uncle, Ivan Petrovich, and crucially, Boris Godunov. He was Prince Ivan Mstislavsky's brother-in-law.
Godunov. So the council was meant to rule for Fyodor, kind of hold things together?
That was the plan, yeah. Rule in Fyodor's stead, provide some stability, at least that was the theory, until Fyodor was ready, or maybe, something else became clear.
Right, the theory. Given that setup, how quickly did Boris Godunov start consolidating his own position? Did he waste any time?
No, not at all. Very swiftly. Ivan the Fatal dies in 1584, Fyodor takes the throne, and almost right away Boris Godunov finds himself heading the Boyar Council.
Which was essentially the top aristocratic body.
Exactly, the highest governing council.
So overnight, he becomes the most powerful figure among Russia's elite. Huge influence. But as we'll definitely see, a really dangerous position to be in, especially in a place so prone to power struggles. So Godunov's got the power. But like you said, powerful doesn't always mean secure in Russia back then. What kinds of challenges did he face right away, trying to hold on to that power?
Oh, immediate threats. In 1585, Ivan Mstislavsky, another powerful figure on the council, tried to grab more power for himself. But Godunov, he actually teamed up temporarily with Nikita Romanov, who was the head of the family that would later become the Romanov dynasty.
Interesting alliance.
Yeah. And together, they pushed back against Mstislavsky. He was quickly packed off to a monastery, end of his political career, just like that.
Wow, swift, brutal. And that alliance with the Romanovs, even temporary, seems pretty strategic. But Mstislavsky wasn't the only threat, was he? There was another challenge soon after.
Exactly right. Less than 2 years later, 1586 rolls around, and Ivan Petrovich, remember, Fyodor's uncle, another key guy from the original Regency Council, he also tries to gain more authority.
And how did that go?
Same result. He failed, and he also got forced into a monastery. So, by this point, there's really no question. Godunov is the strongest man in Russia. Fyodor might be Tsar in name, but everyone knows Boris Godunov is the one actually running the show.
But even with all that power, there's always kind of a shadow hanging around, isn't there? And in this case, it was the other son, the young Tsarevich Dmitri. Discontent was brewing. Rumors started.
That's right. A lot of people resented Godunov's power. And even though Dmitri was young, you started hearing whispers. Maybe he should replace Fyodor.
Oh.
And then, tragedy strikes again. In 1591, young Dmitri dies. Officially, it was ruled an accident.
An accident.
Right.
Always suspicious in these situations.
Deeply suspicious. Whether it really was an accident or something else, well, it remained a huge point of speculation. And it would definitely fuel things later during the Troubles.
And then the final act for this dynasty, Tsar Fyodor's death in 1598, childless. That really is the end of an era, isn't it? The Rurik Dynasty, gone after centuries.
Precisely. January 1598, Fyodor dies, no heirs. It's the absolute end. And it leaves this massive power vacuum, something Russia hadn't faced in, well, hundreds of years. So naturally, all eyes turn to Boris Godunov.
The man who'd been running things behind the scenes anyway.
Exactly. He was the de facto ruler, the most experienced, the most powerful candidate by far.
So after years of basically being Tsar without the title, Godunov finally gets the crown. Elected by the nobles in 1598. But knowing Russia at this time, his coronation probably brought new problems, right? Even from people who used to be allies.
Not at all surprising, yeah.
Yeah.
Right away, Fyodor Romanov, remember Nikita Romanov's family. This Fyodor, a former ally, becomes one of Godunov's biggest opponents.
Ah, the Romanovs again.
But Godunov, he knew how to play the game by now. He dealt with this rival decisively. Within just 2 years, Fyodor Romanov was exiled to a monastery. Same fate as Mstislavsky and Ivan Petrovich before him. Another potential challenger removed.
Okay, so Godunov is at the absolute peak. He's removed the human rivals. But this is where the story takes another turn, isn't it? Because Russia was about to face something totally different, a disaster on a national scale.
Absolutely devastating. From 1601 onwards, it's just one catastrophe after another.
Yeah.
The summer of 1601, you get this incredibly cold weather, freezing the crops right in the fields.
In the summer.
Leads to this nationwide food crisis, famine like they'd never seen. Then 1602, 1603, an epidemic breaks out on top of the starvation.
Oh my goodness.
Millions, literally millions of people died. Starvation, disease, social order just completely collapsed across the country. It's hard to even picture.
It sounds apocalyptic. Famine, plague, society breaking down, Russia's completely on its knees. How does Godunov, the Tsar, even try to respond to something like that? What could he do?
Well, his main response, and this turned out to be a huge mistake, was heavy taxation.
Taxation during a famine.
Exactly. Now, maybe he thought it would stabilize things fiscally, but you have to understand, in that context, with people starving and dying, it wasn't just a tax. It felt like a profound betrayal.
Like the Tsar wasn't protecting his people.
Precisely. It shattered any legitimacy he might have had left. It turned all that hardship and suffering into open rebellion. This is really where the time of troubles fully ignites.
And what's fascinating, or maybe terrifying, is how every crisis seems to create an opening for someone else. And with Russia in chaos, its neighbor, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, saw its chance.
Yes, the instability was just too tempting for them to ignore. And the opportunity came in a very strange form. This mysterious figure, a man claiming he was Dmitri.
Not the Dmitri who died.
The very same. This guy claimed he was Tsarevich Dmitri, that he'd somehow escaped assassination years ago, and now he was back, coming from Poland, to reclaim his rightful throne and free Russia from Godunov's tyranny.
Wow, okay, so instead of launching a risky full-scale invasion, the Polish-Lithuanian nobles thought backing this, Dmitri was a better bet. What was their thinking?
Two main things made it attractive. First, they knew they could exploit the unhappiness inside Russia. A lot of Russian boyars, the nobles, hated Godunov. They wouldn't support a direct Polish invasion, no way.
Right.
But maybe, just maybe, they'd support someone who seemed to be a Rurik, even if he came with Polish help. It was a way to get rid of Godunov and install a new Tsar who'd owe them big time, grant them influence.
Clever. And the second reason, was there a religious angle too?
Oh, definitely. Dmitri hinted he was leaning towards Catholicism. For the very Catholic Poles, this was huge. They dreamed that a Catholic Tsar might eventually pull Orthodox Russia into the Catholic Church. That would be an enormous win for them, religiously and politically.
A massive gamble, but with potentially huge rewards. So, this Dmitri, with Polish backing, he actually invades. How did that unfold for Godunov?
October 1604, Dmitri crosses into Russia with about 2,500 Polish soldiers. Not a huge army, but his arrival immediately causes chaos.
Yeah.
People in the south and southwest areas already unhappy. They just flocked to him, supported him against Godunov.
So instant civil war.
The first major civil war of the Troubles, yeah. And then, almost incredibly fortunate for Dmitri, Boris Godunov suddenly dies of a stroke in 1605.
Just like that.
Just like that. Godunov's son, Fyodor II, took the throne, but only for a moment. Dmitri marched into Moscow in July 1605 and was crowned Tsar. A truly amazing rise for, well, an impostor.
So he actually made it. He's Tsar. But that question of who he really was must have still been hanging in the air, especially for those skeptical nobles. How did this Dmitri try to make his claim seem real?
He made some smart moves. Symbolically, he visited Ivan the Terrible's tomb, which was powerful. But even more importantly, he arranged a meeting with Ivan's last wife, Mariana Nagaya.
Dmitri's mother.
Exactly. And incredibly, she publicly confirmed that yes, this was her long-lost son.
No way. Did people buy it?
Some did. That confirmation convinced quite a few skeptical boyars. It gave him a much-needed stamp of legitimacy. But others, they were still deeply suspicious. Was Mariana just playing along to secure her own power under this new czar? The debate didn't go away. It just simmered under the surface.
Even with that confirmation, it sounds like he still managed to alienate a lot of Russians pretty quickly. What were his big mistakes as Tsar?
Well, he had debts to pay to his Polish backers. So he made two huge errors, culturally and religiously. First, he converted to Catholicism.
Big mistake in Orthodox Russia.
Massive. And second, he announced his marriage to a Polish noblewoman, Marina Mniszek. These actions, taken together, were seen as a terrible insult to Russian Orthodox tradition by nobles and common folk alike. It just cemented the idea that he wasn't a real Russian czar, just a Polish puppet.
Which, of course, created the perfect opening for someone else to challenge him. And this is where Vasily Shuisky steps in. How did he try to take down False Dmitri?
Right. Vasily Shuisky, he came from a really old, respected Russian family. He organized a new rebellion. He and his brothers, Ivan and Dmitri, launched this very effective smear campaign.
What was the story they pushed?
They claimed Dmitri was a total fraud. Specifically, a runaway monk named Grishka Otrepyev. No Rurik blood at all, just a pawn for the Poles. And this story really caught on. Nobles, commoners, the clergy, especially those furious about the Catholicism and the Polish marriage, they rallied behind Shuisky.
And the final move sounds incredibly audacious, happening right at Dmitri's wedding.
Almost unbelievable, isn't it? The Shuisky brothers planned their coup for Dmitri's wedding to Marina Mniszek in May 1606. They knew hundreds of Polish nobles and Dmitri's Russian supporters would all be gathered right there in the Kremlin. Perfect timing.
Oh, they struck then.
On May 17, 1606, Shuisky's men stormed the Kremlin. Dmitri tried to escape, actually jumped out of a window, but he broke his leg. Couldn't get away. Shuisky's supporters caught him and shot him dead. A very dramatic end to a very strange reign.
So, False Dmitri I is dead. Vasily Shuisky grabs his chance, declares himself Tsar almost immediately. But did his rule bring any stability? Was he accepted any more than Dmitri?
Not really, no. He proclaimed himself Tsar just 2 days after Dmitri's death, May 19, 1606, and was crowned June 1st. But it was so fast, so opportunistic, it made him incredibly unpopular right from the start.
Seen as just another power grab.
Exactly. Many saw him as just another ambitious noble seizing the moment, not a legitimate ruler chosen by God or the people. So instead of calming things down, it just fueled more discontent, more hatred. The search for a real leader just kept going.
And the cycle just continues. More instability means more pretenders. And now we get into a second false Tsar war. How did that even start?
Well, believe it or not, some rebels just refused to accept that the first false Dmitri was actually dead. They claimed Shuisky killed someone else who just looked like him. Seriously. So Prince Tsarsevich was sent off to try and find the real Dmitri. He didn't find him, of course, but he did run into a Cossack leader calling himself Tsarevich Pyotr. This Pyotr claimed he was the secret son of Ivan V's other dead son, Fyodor.
Oh, come on. Another secret son.
Yep, zero proof, naturally. But Tsarsevich, desperate for a figurehead against Shuisky, backed him anyway, invited him to Moscow to overthrow Shuisky. Pyotr and his rebels set up camp in Tula, but Shuisky's army quickly besieged them there.
And just when you think it cannot possibly get any more chaotic,
it does. While the siege of Tula is happening, this is July 1607, yet another man appears. And this one claims he's the real Dmitri, the one who supposedly survived the Wedding Day Massacre back in 1606.
False Dmitri II.
False Dmitri II, exactly. He claimed the man killed that day was just some poor soul dressed up by Shuisky's men. The rebels trapped in Tula, desperate for any hope, immediately endorsed this new impostor. And that sets the stage for another brutal false Tsar war. Vasily Shuisky now has to fight yet another Dmitri claimant for his shaky throne.
What an absolutely incredible, turbulent period, the time of troubles. It really was this desperate search for leadership when the dynasty just collapsed. We've seen foreign interference, terrible natural disasters, and this This willingness of people to believe in a true czar, almost no matter how many times they were fooled, it's almost hard to comprehend.
It really shows you how fragile everything can become, doesn't it? When that central trust breaks down, when basic needs aren't met, society can just fracture.
Yeah. Which leaves us with a pretty profound question, I think. In a time like that, such complete chaos, such uncertainty, when a whole nation is just desperate for a leader, what makes a story, even a completely impossible sounding story like these Dmitris, believable? And what does that tell us about that really thin line between fact and faith, or maybe hope and delusion, especially when survival and power are hanging in the balance?